Condolences continue to pour in for South Africa's ambassador to France, Nathi Mthethwa, as investigations also are continuing. Let's now welcome Dr Kingsley Makhubela, former South African ambassador and the Director of Risk Recon, to help us understand just the next steps that South African government will take and for repatriation of the minister and the late ambassador's remains. Thank you so much, Dr. Makhubela, for your time. Before we talk about repatriations, as we also continue to get your reaction to Ambassador Mthethwa's death, we've heard a lot of speculation in the absence of clear information, I would say. From your experience, what are the immediate diplomatic protocols here, when a serving ambassador passes away abroad under these sudden and unclear circumstances?
Well, Nathi, good afternoon, and my sincere condolences to Nathi, to his spouse and the entire family. It's quite sad, really, to lose a diplomat. But Nathi, there's a lot of information circulating on the social media, and some conclusions are starting to be drawn that he committed suicide. In the world of diplomacy, which is sometimes very much intertwined with the espionage world, you've got to be very careful because of the circumstances under which he passed away. There's a need to conduct thorough investigation to ensure that he was not led into a hotel room, to check the closed-circuit televisions, to really even take the fiber in the room where he was, what happened. So there's a need for a detailed investigation before conclusions are drawn that he committed suicide. But that investigation would require also looking into the communication that he's had with different people in perhaps the last few months, to go in details, what was the discussion, and so on. And to do that, Nathi, it is complicated by the whole diplomatic law. Mm-hmm. And there are 3 articles here that I would like to raise with you, Nathi. Article 29, Article 31, and Article 32 of the Vienna Convention. Now, Article 31 speaks about diplomatic inviolability from giving evidence, meaning that the diplomat cannot willy-nilly give evidence, so the French authorities would have a huge challenge in terms of conducting this investigation. And they will need some level of waiver for whoever is going to give evidence. I've seen insinuation, I've never seen concrete evidence that Nathi's spouse sent a message that, Nathi sent a message to saying, literally suicidal tendencies. So that needs to be verified. He was not led or he was not coerced to send that kind of a message. What happened? So I think it's premature for anyone to conclude that there's suicide at this stage before detailed investigation. Now, the waiver must be provided in terms of access to his communication, and that waiver cannot be done by anyone else but the sending state. And in terms of this is in Article 32 of the Vienna Convention. And that waiver can be given by the authorities here to have access to his communication. There's also the oldest thing in diplomacy, Nathi, the personal inviolability. Anything that is to do with Nathi Mthethwa is inviolable, meaning that no one can access that without proper authority, and that is established in Article 29 of the Vienna Convention. So these are the complications that are arising out of this investigation.
Yeah, I mean, notwithstanding, of course, the provisions provided under the Vienna Convention, what role does the host country, in this case France, play then in investigating and communicating with the South African authorities too? And also, how important is timely communication from both governments, in ensuring credibility and avoiding this misinformation that we are currently seeing?
Because he was the ambassador, in this case, I would have assumed that the South African government has dispatched a team of top detectives from the country to work together with the French so that when necessary, permission is given for waiver to have access to certain information that would inform the French, that would facilitate better investigation. So if you don't have your people on the ground, it will be very difficult to really give this to the French on their own without the involvement of the South African in terms of conducting the investigation. And I'm saying, given the murky world of diplomacy and espionage that sometimes create huge problem, was he blackmailed to do this? Was he forced to do this? So the conclusion now that a lot of people are starting to draw, I think is premature. And I would hope that our government has dispatched a unit. They've given proper authorization and they're on standby to provide a waiver where it's necessary. The waiver in terms of the inviolability must be on the case basis, and there must be detailed evidence that will be given to the French police to have access even to his cell phone, to check who was communicating with him, at what time, to do tracking of his mobile. You need waiver.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Apologies.
You need waiver.
No, apologies for that. I mean, I'm also looking at just some of the commentary on social media. Clayton Monyela also explaining, and he's, of course, the head of diplomacy at DIRCO, saying that in line with provisions of the Vienna Convention, the diplomatic police unit, a unit within SABC, is dedicated to the diplomatic corps. But let's then take this forward then and talk about the repatriation process. I mean, repatriation, as we know it, of remains often follows a strict procedure. Can you walk us through, what the process looks like, especially when the cause of death, like in this case, is still under investigation?
Nathi, just on what Clayton Monyela said, I wouldn't, if it was me advising, I wouldn't send the diplomatic policing unit, understanding what their functions are, is to give protection to the local diplomats here. You need top detective here that you would send to and assist in the investigation.
Yeah, let me just clarify. I don't think he was saying that. I think he was just trying to give clarity on the difference between, a protective service, as in the form of bodyguards, versus what this does in terms of just the processes. I don't think he was saying that at all.
Okay, thanks, Nathi. I hope they'll send the best of detective that we have. But what is required now? I had the unfortunate responsibility in 2005 to go and pick up the body of the late Bavumile Vilakazi in Uganda, who passed away while on tour of duty. The Ugandan government was quite cooperative. I had discussion with President Museveni, and I went there with the family to pick up the body and to understand what's going on there. So there's a need, in terms of this case of Ambassador Mthethwa, there's going to be a need to really dispatch this team to assist in facilitating the movement of the body. He remains with serious and full diplomatic immunity, even though he's passed away. So the French government will see what kind of courtesies they extend to South Africans to repatriate the body and to conduct proper investigation. The South Africans will participate together. If there's any post-mortem that needs to be done, they will participate together to ensure that all the evidence gathered is not compromised before his body and the remains are transported to South Africa. But that is a responsibility of the host, of the sending state, to repatriate the body together with his belongings and everything that he has. So it's going to be a really monumental task to start putting things together. The hotel where he was, they may say, well, he still owes us, so the government needs to arrange and fix that. The hotel may say, well, this window that was broken by him must be repaired. So the government would have to take care of those issues that are very fundamental in preparation for the repatriation, to excuse me, to ensure that nothing hinders the repatriation of the remains of the ambassador back to the country.
And just going back to the South African government, how should the South African government, strike this balance between respecting French investigative processes, but also at the same time reassuring the South African public at home? Because we know, of course, the family too that is in KZN is also reading and seeing some of these speculations in the media, in the public, and not really clear in terms of what is happening. Our reporters were also there in KZN, just visiting the family and just speaking to Nathi Mthethwa's father, and just trying to get an understanding in terms of where they are. It seems that there is a need, to also keep them abreast in terms of what's happening.
Well, I think the starting point now, because this is an investigation to determine the cause of death, the first starting point is the South African government and the French authority to agree that there's not going to be any communication that the French will do before they consult with the South African government. And the South African government, I suppose, they have designated somebody who would keep the family in touch about what's going on to prevent the leaks and speculation. And I know in the world of social media and the speed of the information that moves across, it's very important to do this. It was disheartening to hear the father saying that they first learned this from the social media. So there's a need to close the communication loop and to ensure that there's better communication. And the French, they are doing this on behalf of the South African government. They shouldn't be leaking things or speaking to any media before clearing this thing with the South African authority, because this is a diplomatic scene. His body and what happened and the scene where it happens, it remains inviolable. And in terms of the diplomatic etiquette, it will be very useful for the French not to start communicating anything before clearing this thing with the South African government.
Yeah, and I mean, just for clarity too, also to you and our viewers, we did reach out to the Department of International Relations, and they will definitely be commenting on this. And so we have reached out, in fact, to Crispin Phiri. But thank you so much, Dr. Makhubela, for your time. Really do appreciate it. Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, the former SA ambassador and the Director of Risk Recon.